Slick Nick has returned. I am the living legend.
I do have to get used to that.
I didn't know if you were about to make up your own name. That's why I was waiting. Oh, look like you're like trying to think of a name. You know.
It works.
So this is ultimately the follow-up to the video where I explained my mother's involvement in me getting this Jeep. But you had texted me after it was all said and done. It was officially purchased and it was in your garage. You had texted me saying it was an interesting situation because neither the buyer nor the seller was concerned with price. And that is pretty phenomenal for a vehicle to be sold, especially a vehicle like this 2010 Jeep Wrangler JK. So I saved thousands of dollars. I mean, basically I get this for about $9,000, I think less than what it should be, somewhere around there. $9,000 is a lot of money if somebody just put that in your pocket and says, hey, go buy the vehicle you always want. Hey, the $9,000, that's exactly in your budget. So we were able to do this. So it's interesting because my wife and I have been saving, you know, for years for me to get a new vehicle. Mm-hmm. And because my Honda Element was still holding up, it meant that our budget got bigger and bigger each year. But still, our budget wasn't going to justify buying a new car. I personally just don't believe in buying a new car. I'd rather someone else wear off the newness of it, and then I, you know, reap the benefits of getting a good deal on it. But for this Jeep, I guess I'll say the price, $15,500, and it's only got 59,000 miles on it, which is unbelievable. It should easily be $9,000 more for that. It's a 2010, but the miles are so low, and even the fact the miles are that low on it. So $15,500 for this Jeep. And, you know, we had that money plus more in the bank, but it's not a matter of simply that my wife and I make good money, which we do, but the point is we don't blow our money. We invest our money and we save our money, and we don't spend much on things that we don't need. It's all about living by the basics and really living below our means. And I think in American culture, it's the opposite. There's this sense of reward if you show off what you have and try to impress people who you don't really care about to begin with the stuff that you buy. But for me, yes, okay, I had fancy tastes and I always wanted this Jeep. Granted, I wouldn't have bought it had I not got it for $9,000 cheaper than it was. But even with that being said, because my wife and I are so strict with our money, we had the money in the bank. And plus we still had our savings too. We just had a car fund of a budget of $15,000, and that's really, we didn't want to go above that. So it fit our budget, but ultimately we had to pick up the vehicle that day or the dealership was going to buy it from the private seller there. And so what's remarkable about this story is the buyer or the seller just wanted it out of the garage. They had, I think, 4 vehicles for 2 people, and it was just in a garage. And so their motivation was so that they could just have it out of the garage, be done with it, and that side of it. So they weren't really necessarily trying to negotiate the price with me. I wasn't saying, hey, will you take less than for it? I never asked less for it because I had the money in the bank and I knew that it was a good deal. So the seller wasn't concerned about the price. They just wanted to basically break even on what they had invested in it. We had the money for it ready for that purpose. But then on top of that, this couldn't happen had you not had the money in the bank. Too, you had to be able to float that money so that I could pay you back, you know, a week later.
That's true, and that's from us tucking money back for your day's retirement. I mean, knowing that we're planning and hoping for full retirement April 2020, and so we've just been so we've just been tucking. We've been tucking back, so it was like, wow, yeah, I can take from here, no problem. And so, yeah.
And it's not like you bought me the car. Obviously, this morning, I wrote you the check to pay you that money, and then we offset it by the cost that you're buying my Element for. But, you know, we were able to float that money. And the moral of the story is not that, look at us, we're rich, we got lots of money. It's, okay, we have careers that have allowed us over the years to make more money and build on top of what we've done. And we've got certain skills and all that, and that's all important. But so many people just blow their money. They don't manage their money. And
so true.
You can't, it's funny that where I used to live on the other side of Nashville, people made less money. but they drove more expensive cars because they were making payments on them and leasing them. And what's funny is once I moved to the suburbs where I'm now, an hour outside of Nashville, you don't see these fancy cars. You see people driving older cars like I have been this whole time. And it's not about the flashy BMW, Mercedes, and all this stuff, because you can tell that those people are managing their money. And managing your money is so much more important than making a lot of money. Now, granted, compared to 10 years ago, my household makes easily more than double what we were making when my wife and I first got married. But because of those stricter times, it forced us to learn how to manage our money. Otherwise, if I was affording this Jeep, I'd be making payments on it. And in my mind, you're not affording something you're making payments on, unless somehow you're going to resell it and make more money for it. Which, based on how good of a deal I got on this Jeep, even if I did sell it in 2 years, I'd still would probably make thousands of dollars off of it. Which this is a rare time when a car actually is a true investment. An investment is where you can actually make money from selling it again, just like a home. But it's just one of those things that not everybody has. They don't have the gift of being able to, the discipline to save money, to manage money, to invest money. And that's something that is a learned skill for a lot of people. But I feel for you it never was. I feel that that was always something that you knew.
Yes, and it doesn't bother me to know that we had that nest egg in there, and that we're continually, especially now, we're just continually adding to it. Okay, we can put this much in this week, and that's good. And it doesn't feel like the money that's sitting there is burning a hole in my pocket. I don't feel like, oh, I've got to hurry up and spend it. I don't feel that way. So it was very nice. It was just a blessing knowing that we needed the money that day. And there was no way that you would have had time to get the money to me. It was Sunday.
Yeah, exactly.
It was Sunday, and yeah.
So it was a deal that was too good to be true. To get this 2010 Jeep Wrangler for $15,500 with only 59,000 miles. It was too good to be true, but we turned the dream into a reality by jumping through some miraculous hoops to get it done. But just having that money available.
It's so true. It's so true. We needed, yes.
But I want to close this video by saying something that I think a lot of people is going to think is a stretch, but I think for us it's just who we are. And I've talked about it a lot more on my other channel, but we always secretly knew that we were part Jewish. We always sensed it. We always knew it.
Yes.
There's this connection to Jewish people,
yes.
Fascination. We always knew it. But then a year or so ago when my mom took the DNA test and it confirmed that Jewish background is undeniably there, and then your cousin's taking DNA tests,
yes,
and it's still confirmed.
It was there.
So
yes.
Didn't grow up in the Jewish faith, but the ethnic background is there. And what's funny about this is, there's this stereotype that Jews make money and they're good at managing money and they're good at investing money. It's not that just because you have some certain DNA that automatically makes you good at a certain thing. But I think honestly what I truly believe is from generation to generation, when you look at the history of Jewish people, they were constantly kicked out of wherever they were, and they had to really find ways to be creative, to make money. They had to save their money, they had to invest their money, because they just kept getting kicked out and kicked out. And I think over those thousands of years, even though we don't identify as Jewish people, I think that even for, with your father, which was the Jewish side, I think somehow that trickled down through him.
Yes,
now, granted, he
definitely.
was born, in the 1930 and grew up in an orphanage, so he grew up with very little, but I still think he had that knowledge that was passed down from all these generations.
Yes.
And while, and so I think when people say that about Jewish people, it almost sounds like a negative stereotype, but I don't see it that way. I think it has everything to do with a generation passing on certain skill sets and information and knowledge to, specifically with Jewish people, the father would have a trade and he would teach his sons that trade, whatever it is. So you're passing that down to the next generation so that they can go from that. But I think so many people, especially in modern day United States, don't have that common sense knowledge of, if you have money, save it. live off as little as you can, low overhead, so that you can invest that much more, save that much more, and then eventually, when you wait 13 years of driving the same car, eventually get what you really want.
It pays off.
So I think that's a big part of the story. It's not simply look at us, we have money. It's we've managed this money with a lot of discipline.
Yes. I'm very content driving my 2007 Ford Escape. I mean, it has never failed me. I love my car.
Let's take a look at it.
I love my car, and it hasn't failed me.
Yeah, there it is.
It hasn't failed me. We've had it now 12 years. We've had it 12 years, and it was used. We bought it from a dealership, and it was a loaner car, a rental car for 1 year from Georgia. In fact,
oh, that's funny.
Ford Escape came from Cummins, Georgia, and we were just very happy to get it. It had very low mileage on it. I don't know, maybe 15,000. It didn't have much, 12, 14, 15,000. Didn't have many miles on it, but we got a really good deal on it. It's a really good car. I'm very content with it. We've had it, June will be 12 years that we've had it. It has never failed me, never given me any problem, and it has 84,000 miles on it. I'm content. I like it to be clean. So when the inside get, middle of winter, you get the mud and the leaves and everything. It drives me crazy, and then I'll have to get it clean. And your daddy's very good about washing and waxing the outside. I have to give him credit for all that. But
we keep it in our cars. I've got another video with him and his truck.
Yes.
How he finally 5 years ago got this new F-150, and before that, for 24 years, he was driving a Ford Ranger, and so it's just a matter of we keep our cars, and I think that's another character trait or whatever you want to call it in our family. I've had that model to live my life after and see. You don't just trade up your cars every couple of years.
And I had to make your daddy get that 5 years ago. I remember having to make him get it because it was ridiculous. He didn't have heat in his truck, so he was driving all the way to work, and his truck still wasn't warming up. I finally told him, I said, okay, we have got to get you a new truck. We have to start the process, and that's the reason why he has this.
Because he kept his other one for so long. And so, but that's what I grew up with. You just keep your cars. And that's one of the easiest ways that so many people, I think, mess up with money, is that they're having to constantly get new cars. And it's funny, and I've said this before, like at work where I used to work, I knew what people were making because I knew what I was making. So I was like, well, they can't be making more than me based on the job I know that they have. And I was thinking, they got this new Camaro. They're totally making payments on that. Yes, it impresses people. Oh, I like your new Camaro, I like your new Mustang, whatever it is. They're making payments. Is that impressing anybody when you're making payments for it? But there's no glory. There's no glory in driving the same truck for 24 years, the same Escape for 12, the same Element for 13. But ultimately, in the long run, financially, it puts you in a position where you can have $15,500 plus more in the bank just to float if you need to help out your son to get the Jeep he's always wanted. So there you go. Good conversation. Important conversation that I don't think people are talking about. I don't think this is being celebrated, and it needs to be said. You got comments? They belong right here.